Welcome, everyone. Today we have Ruthie Aurand on the show. I first met Ruthie as part of a small group of parents who went through a pretty intense 7-month certification program for positive parenting coaches led by Wendy Snyder. Now, if you've been listening to the podcast for a while, you know Wendy has been my mentor on all things parenting for over 6 years now. So this program was really meaningful for me. Getting to work side by side with Ruthie through it was such a privilege. She has this incredible, genuine drive to really understand people, her own journey, her kids' unique needs, and the tough parts of being a parent. She approaches everything with so much compassion for herself and everyone around her, and her goal of just being a better human and lifting others up is contagious. So today I invited Ruthie to share her story with us, the shifts she has experienced as she first discovered positive parenting as a mom and then dove deeper into it as a coach. She'll talk about the aha moments along the way and also some humbling stories that remind us that no matter how much we learn, we are all still human and make mistakes. So, Ruthie, welcome. I'm so grateful to have you here.
Thank you, Belly. I'm really excited to be here with you. So thanks
Me
for having me
too.
on.
Me too. To start, can you tell us a little about your family, how old your kids are, where you live, and what life looked like before you found positive parenting?
Sure. So I am married to the love of my life. His name is Dave, and we have two small girls. They're 7 and 5. And I found this work 2.5 to 3 years ago. So when my children were a bit smaller, and before I found Wendy, I would describe my parenting as very much the old school style, very much parents are in charge, very much disciplined with harsh punishment, and very reactive. It's so fascinating to me, Belly, how when I look at the old paradigm of parenting, there's very little teaching involved, like teaching our children what to do. A lot of it is focusing on what we don't want them to do and just kind of reacting to those things. So that was a lot of my life. It was kind of living from reaction to reaction and not very much mindfulness.
Mhm.
A huge part of this work for me is like just learning to be present in the moment and being mindful is really transformed so much of my parenting.
And was there a specific moment or challenge that made you realize you wanted to try a different approach? Because sometimes there's just one incident that makes us step back and say, okay, something's got to change here. Was there that moment for you?
I don't think I can remember a moment exactly in my parenting walk. So I kind of found Wendy through a work of another woman. Her name is Sheila Gregor, and she teaches a lot about equality between men and women. And she also had a little spoof about children in one of her, I think it was the blog that I read about spanking and how you can be a great parent and not have to spank your kids. And to me, that was like, this is really interesting. And so I just kind of went down that trail and it turned into a huge snowball effect of learning, opening all these doors and just getting into a whole different world that I never even knew was out there. I like to say, like, you never know what you don't have until you have it. Like I didn't know that there was all this other stuff out there. But yeah, as far as a specific, isn't it, with my kids, looking back, I can recall some moments where I really had some rough moments as a mother, like reacting, shouting, pushing my kids that I remember feeling really bad about. And I wish now that I would have listened to those feelings, listened to my body and what it was telling me, which I know now is a huge part of this work. So yeah, looking back, I can see that there were those moments that could have been awakening moments for me if I'd been like paying attention and listening.
Yeah, it's so true. And actually, reacting and trying to overpower our kids takes so much energy and doesn't even seem to be effective all the time. For me, that moment was when my oldest was 4 and my middle one was 3. And I had a new baby on the way. And I was like, okay, my oldest is my power kiddo. She always pushed back. She wants to do things her way. And she has this incredible drive to understand why certain limits are set before she's ready to agree to them. And I was like, oh
Mm.
my God, I don't have the power and energy to do that anymore. And there has to be another way because I cannot do this with three little ones to look after.
Yeah, wow. And how did you find Wendy? I'm just curious.
I don't even remember that because, in
Oh,
my country, there wasn't a lot of talk about that. I mean, I realized
yeah.
later there are some people who are talking about positive parenting, but I don't know, somewhere in Facebook, I guess, through a Facebook ad. I was ready and the teaching
Yeah.
found me. And I was wondering now that
Okay.
you've been on this journey for a while, how has your relationship with your kids evolved? Do you feel a shifting connection? Can you recall something that you
Yes.
can share with us?
Yes. My kids now, they're so free to be themselves. And I can really see that with my oldest. So, my oldest, I regret to say, because she is my oldest, she took a lot of that harshness. And I did spank my kids when they were little. And I can remember her not wanting me to hold her afterwards. I was taught that you're supposed to spank your kids and afterwards hold them and tell them why you had to do it and stuff like that. And she never really wanted me to hold her afterwards. And there was like a distance there that I didn't know what to do with and I didn't know how to fix. And when I found this work, so it's been, like I said, I think it's going on 3 years since I stopped, the spanking, especially. That was really huge for me because I was taught that that's how you do it. That's how you're supposed to raise your kids is spank them when they don't listen to you. And my oldest, there is so much more connection there. And that connection part of our relationship that I couldn't figure out how to get closer to her is really coming together. And
Mm.
oh, thinking of an example of this now is she's free to like tell us when we're off. Like she'll tell us now, that's not good parenting, or that was a threat. We were putting her to bed the other night and we were like, if you do not, whatever, get into bed, we're not gonna read a story tonight. And she's like, that's a threat.
Oh,
So
yeah,
there's
I
just
love
so
that.
much more, yeah, there's just so much more fun now and closeness that I can really tell for sure 100% is because we removed that harsh fear and punishment from our house. She's more free to be herself. And it's still a process. Like we're still working on being vulnerable and being open with ourselves and with her too, like modeling that. But it's so much better than where it was, Billy.
Yeah, and let's
Just the
celebrate the
connection
small
part.
wins. Yes,
Yeah.
along the way. And
Yeah.
it's funny that you mentioned threats because it's something I still sometimes find myself slipping back into old habits. There is such a thin line between threats and sequencing. That's something I'm trying to implement. And let
Yes.
me give
Yeah.
an example for the listeners so they can get what we mean by that. In our house, bedtime is a bit of a battle. We have a rule that everyone should be in bed by 9:30 and the kids have like 30 minutes of TV in the evening. So a sequencing would sound like you guys take a shower, brush your teeth, get into your PJs, and then you can have your screen time. At 9:30, lights are out. A threat, on the other hand, is something like if you don't get ready for bed now, there's no TV tonight. And I sometimes still revert to that. And it's not even the way I structure the sentence, but it's the tone. I know the tone is key.
Yeah.
And if we
Yeah.
say it in a calm, like neutral tone, like these are the rules, buddy. The faster you're ready, the more time you'll have for the show. But it's so hard to master the tone right there in the heated situation, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is. And yeah, I appreciate your honesty because I totally relate, Billy. Like it is very easy to get back into those habits and patterns and just watching for those signs. Like it's so helpful to just learn how to like tweak your words, like you said. It is similar. It's almost like you're saying the same thing, but if you just tweak those words and then, you know, the whole taking a breath, calming down, help relax your body so you can get a better tone coming out of your mouth is super helpful.
Yeah, that's
And
been a struggle
it's
for
a
me too.
challenge. Yeah, it's a challenge.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah.
bedtime is a big one for us too, for sure.
What would you say are some of the hardest habits or beliefs you had to work on changing personally? We all have our
Mm.
own unique growth edges, so to speak.
Two things come to mind. And one thing I think is probably maybe the biggest life-changing piece of this whole thing for me, and that's like the self-compassion, like being gentle on yourself. And I just continue to be amazed so much about how this work changes me. You know, as parents, we're taught that like we're supposed to change our children, shape them, mold them, make them, tell them what to do, tell them what to be. But it's just so fascinating to me how this paradigm switches it all around to where like we're the ones in control of ourselves, you know, that self control, and we have the control to change ourselves, and which in turn models for them. That has been the biggest life-changing piece for me, and also maybe one of the hardest ones to implement, because shame and harshness to myself has just been like a way of life my whole life. So learning to speak gently to myself, it's probably the hugest piece and also the most challenging. And
Mhm.
then kind of along with that, another thing that comes to mind is the punishment mentality. And there again, I think it's just what I grew up with. It's what is modeled so many places in the world, everywhere. And just switching from that punishment, you know, making someone feel bad for what they did, to giving grace and then teaching a different way. So life changing. I think if we can get that one thing taught in all of our homes, like the world would be just such a better place. And it's also a really challenging one to shake, because it's so crazy how until you have this awareness, you don't realize every place in your life that you have that mentality in your head. So
Yeah,
that's a big one too.
that's a
Yeah,
big
but the
one.
thing that's really gotten me hooked on this, Billy, is I've seen the results. Like I've seen that this new way works. I'll just give you an example with my daughters. Like when they're fighting and one of them will hit the other one, if I come down on her hard and say, "Why would you do that?" I can physically see her like close up and shut down and get very defensive. Whereas if I'm learning now to go in and be like, I can see that you're angry. I can see that, you know, there's a reason why this happened. And if I show grace to her and empathy, she's so much quicker to make up, to say sorry, to take responsibility for what she did. So I can see that that really, really works when you switch up that punishment.
It's amazing that you can do that. This is one of the areas I'm still working hard on. Not to come in and blame one of them because it's a pattern for one of them to be the bully and the other one the victim. And I'm
Yeah,
sometimes quick to rescue. So this is one of my areas of growth. But I want to come
right.
back to self-compassion, and I really think that this work requires the courage to be imperfect. And we're all going to have days that things don't go as planned, and it's easy to think, oh, I could have handled this better. And it's still crucial to have grace and not beat ourselves up. And I wanted to ask if there has been a time where you were right on the edge of slipping into blame and shame, but you were able to step back and just remember it doesn't have to be that way.
Yeah, I'll give you a recent example. My oldest daughter, she's 7, and she's kind of like my little mini me. And she has a lot of worries and fears. And she actually had kind of like a panic attack at school the other day. And the teacher called me in and we talked it over, talked about strategies and everything. And afterwards, I felt a lot of guilt. We talked together as a family about worry and anxiety and the things we can do and like just talk about our feelings. So we're working on that. And while we're working on that, I realized that I have the same patterns. I have a lot of fear, worry, and anxiety. And I immediately just started slipping down into that hole of shame, feeling like this is my fault that my daughter is suffering, you know, these mental things because I have them too. And shame is something, Billy, I'm still unpacking. I think for me, my whole life, shame has been really intertwined with fear. So I have a hard time pulling those things apart and just feeling the fear without the shame. They kind of get mixed in together. So when this whole thing happened with my daughter, I started going down this path of like, I'm just such a terrible mother. And I caught myself and I realized that this is shame. It's okay that she's experiencing fear. It's okay. A lot of people experience fear and anxiety. It's okay that I am experiencing fear and anxiety. It's the shame that is telling me that I am, a bad mother. I'm messing her up. I'm ruining her, all those things that come into our heads. And so I was really able to stop myself, because when I feel those feelings, it gets really intense. Like it kind of leads to that panic attack feeling, that really just antsy, scared, terrible feeling. And I was able to stop it and just look at it for what it is and tell myself, this is okay that I experience these things. A lot of other people do, a lot of kids do. We have tools. We're going to work through it. We can get the things we need and it's going to be okay. And I'm actually really proud of myself for that,
Oh,
because,
yeah.
yeah, watching her, it's such a mirror for me. And it's actually a wonderful thing. As parents, we hate to watch our children suffer, go through these things. But it's actually a beautiful thing when you look at it with gentleness and compassion, that this is okay. It's showing me what I need to work on and we can do it together. We can get through it together. So,
It's just
yeah.
beautiful. Wow, amazing. I've had a similar realization during the program. One of my aha moments was that I'm also modeling some old patterns that I don't really agree on. And here's a bit of a background. My oldest, Laura, she's almost 11 now. And she has this strong belief that when someone hurts her, she has to hurt back. And this is the only way to avoid appearing weak. And I've been working with her on this for a while. But during the workshop, I was like, oh my God, no wonder she's doing this. I'm modeling the same thing. And it's
Mm,
just in a subtler way. I don't retaliate with words or actions, but I'm using my tone and I'm withdrawing affection. So it's the same thing. And
yeah.
I was like, I really felt bad at the moment, but also it
Mm,
empowered me that I can do something about it. Like I have to
right.
start processing my own feelings of hurt in a healthier way and demonstrate to her, or she won't be able to see a different way to handle her feelings. So
Right.
when you realize it, it gives you power to change it. You're not just a victim.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. 100%. And just being able to like feel those feelings in full, separate from the shame. Like you said, you felt bad about it initially, and the more gentleness you can pile on yourself and that compassion and kindness, the more you can separate that feeling from the shame and really just feel the feeling. And like you said, the empowerment that comes with that, it really is empowering to feel your feelings and to like have that realization, like, this is what I'm feeling and this is what I can do. It's amazing.
Yeah, and we're all aiming for progress, right? Not for perfection. Just one step at a
Yes.
time. I'm always
Yes.
reminding myself about that. And I would like for you to imagine if you had to just pick one or two key concepts from positive parenting, what do you think every parent should know? You mentioned punishment, maybe something around that, but could you dive deeper in what would you tell a person who's just getting into positive parenting?
Two key concepts. Wow, there's so many. I think I would probably still go with the self-compassion piece. If a parent is able to be gentle on themselves, they're going to be gentle on their children. So I think that would probably be the number one thing that I would recommend to parents, is just practicing having grace with yourself, having gentleness with yourself, and just looking for ways where it shows up when you're not. We talk about being hard on ourselves. There's so many different ways that can show up in your life, and just being aware of it. For me, that feels like the foundation of everything that this is built on. And that's me personally, speaking from personal experience, that's one of the life-changing things for me. I did not realize before, and I would tell this to parents, Billy, that when you have self compassion on yourself, it just flows out. It's so interesting how, and Wendy taught us this, when we put shame on ourselves, we put shame on our children. Even if we don't want to, even if we try not to, even if we stuff it or hide it, it comes out. It's really crazy. The more that we can practice that gentleness, the more we will be gentle with other people. It's really amazing how it works. And I grew up thinking that to love yourself is weird and that it's selfish or whatever things people say about it, but it really is not selfish. It's one of the most unselfish things that you can do for yourself, to have compassion on yourself, and that will flow out to your kids and everybody else. It's just one of those concepts that just multiplies in so many ways. I think that would be my biggest piece to tell parents that are just getting into this. As far as another close second, the punishment one is huge. Trying to think of another one.
I just want to add something that you might take on. I think that in the beginning, having a coach could be a game changer. There's so much,
Yes.
like you mentioned. And having a coach is like having someone in your corner to keep you accountable and help you build momentum. Because in the beginning, you might feel overwhelmed. There's so much that I'm not doing right now. There's so much that I want to do differently. And it can be a daunting task to switch. And that's why I think that having a coach might be helpful, at least in the beginning. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I would totally agree with that, Billy. And I would also say I love the concept of coaching, because coaching is not someone telling you what to do. Coaching is someone helping you find your own answers. So coaching is very empowering. Often in therapy or other professional services, it's a lot of times experts telling you what should be done. And I love the concept of coaching so much, because coaches really just enable you to do your own work. And along with that, they can also, like you said, just give you small steps, like one or two things to concentrate on versus the whole big picture that overwhelms you at times. So yeah, absolutely. I love the idea. That's a great one, using a coach to get started.
And one more thing. What's a favorite tool you would love to share with the listeners? I always like to give some actionable steps. Self-compassion is great. It's the bigger picture, the concept. Some small tweak they can use in their parenting tomorrow, for example. Anything you can recommend?
Okay, I have a lot that comes to mind, but I think one of the first ones that's super easy to implement, a great first step is, and this is kind of going to sound silly, but is to stop talking. I'm going to give you an example. So my oldest daughter, she's an attention kid. She just loves me being with her and giving her attention. That's how she feels loved. And I have realized so much lately that whenever she has a problem, I will rush in to like give ideas. I'll give you an example, a specific example with her. She has trouble sleeping at night. She's thinking, like, she has a big mind, a big heart. She's always thinking about things. And it's just really hard for her to go to sleep. And in the past, I've always been like, well, try this, just relax, just do this. And one night I was in there sitting with her and I just said, I have trouble sleeping too sometimes. And I just gave her a hug and I sat with her. And that did more for her than anything else I have ever tried to tell her to fix. And sometimes I think that we can have a fix it tone with our kids without even realizing it, because we really want to help them. We want to give them tools and things to do. But I think a great first step would be just to sit with your kids and just use as little as words as possible, hugs, snuggles, and especially in those times when you want to contradict her, maybe they share a big feeling with you and you want to say, that's not true. Or so just taking a break from words and just using less words is simple but big, powerful tool that you can start with.
Great tip. That's a great tip. Thank you, Ruthie. Thank you so much for this beautiful conversation. I'm truly grateful for how open you've been, sharing the real and vulnerable parts of your journey. And I know our listeners will be taking away so much from what you shared. And before we say goodbye, could you let anyone know where they can connect with you, whether to learn more about your work, ask questions, or just say hi?
Well, sure. Thanks for asking, Billy. I do have an Instagram account. It's called Beautiful Life parenting. So that's probably the best place to find me. I'm also on Facebook, just under my name, Ruthie Aurand. It's Aurand.
And you'll be offering
I'm
some coaching sessions for people who are interested and who might vibe with you. So just to let people know
yeah,
about that.
yes, I am building my coaching business. It's still very small. I'm kind of growing slowly, but yes, that is something that I'm working to do as well. Thank you
Amazing.
so much, Billy.
Thank you.